before we dive in, do not forget to subscribe to the podcast, to leave a review, and to, of course, share with us what else you would like to hear about on the next episodes. So today, everybody, we are going into part 2 of my birth story because I gave you guys such immense detail in part 1 of everything that happened from like the very beginning to the very end. And now I want to go into more of your questions. That's what we're going to go through today. I left a question box on my Instagram. So you guys left some really great questions that I'm going to go through about birth, postpartum, prep work, my mindset, what helped with the pain, all of it. For those of you that haven't listened to part 1, go and listen to that first. I do really feel like you need to know the story and some of the context I gave around our birth, our home birth, why I chose certain things and whatnot before you go into today's episode. Other thing I want to share with you guys is that I am going to be doing a postpartum masterclass in October, which I'm really looking forward to, and really going through every single thing that I did to make my postpartum experience such a blissful experience. And this is even me as a first-time mom. It was incredible. And I'm like still obviously postpartum, but those early weeks and everything, like it just was so good. So I'm going to be giving you guys everything. It's going to be really interactive, lots of Q&A time and whatnot. And you'll really get what you need from it because it'll be like an open conversation in a Zoom room, that kind of thing. So we don't have the details like fully finalized for that yet. But if you want to be kept in the loop, we'll put a waitlist link for that below. So when we do have that, you guys can, you'll get an email so you can immediately book in your spot for that and not miss that because we're going to do it once. It's going to be live and then you will not be able to buy the evergreen. So it's definitely like a get in now, even if like you're not even going to be postpartum in like the next month, but you want it for later, buy it now, watch it later. And a lot of the postpartum stuff that I'll give you guys in that, it really was about the work that I did quite literally 2 years prior to that postpartum experience. Okay, let's dive into some of these questions. Okay, all about your home birth decision. Were you ever afraid of not being in a hospital? No. And I kind of alluded to this in part 1 in the actual birth story. One, I really knew, okay, actually I didn't say this in the birth story. I really researched the safety of having a home birth, especially when you compare it to the intervention and the rate of intervention and just what goes on in US hospitals. That is not to say hospitals are bad. I talked about that in part 1, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. But if I was in Australia or if I was in the UK, I potentially would have entertained a hospital birth. I was not entertaining hospital birth in the slightest. There was no room for that in the conversation. Didn't even cross my mind. It absolutely was not happening. That was the one thing I knew was not happening, that I was not going into the hospital by choice. The only reason why I was going to the hospital was if I was like on my deathbed. And I was not afraid of being not in the hospital. So I wasn't afraid of being at home because I knew that my body knew what to do. I had a low risk pregnancy. I was extremely healthy in my whole pregnancy. I did so much prep work for the labor to give myself the greatest chances of having an easy labor. It wasn't like I was sedentary, right? If I was sedentary the whole labor, there is a higher risk then that, baby isn't in the right position, which then obviously brings labor complications, all that kind of stuff. If I didn't have any nervous system regulation, then I would have been more scared that I wouldn't have been able to handle the intensity of labor, but I wasn't worried about any of those things. So I was not scared at all because I also know with every cell of my body, and I'd reprogrammed this a long time ago, that birth and pregnancy is not a medical emergency. We have been doing it for literally forever, right? And women used to birth like this, and so many other women, so many other women in the world have home births, and it's completely safe. So why would it not be safe for me? Especially because I had a low risk pregnancy and I was prepped for birth. So I was not afraid. I was more afraid of being in the hospital than I was at being at home because, like I spoke about in part 1, safety is subjective. I feel safer being at home than I do being in the hospital. So that was that. Hal, on the other hand, was a little bit more afraid in the beginning of me not being in the hospital. And there was, a lot of conversations we had, a lot of learning that he did. And then he was not afraid. He was so proud. He would tell everybody. I didn't tell any people about the home birth because I didn't want their opinions, but he's at his own will to do whatever he wants. And he would proudly and boldly tell people that we were having a home birth, that he was so ready for it, that he was so confident, that he was so excited, that he knew that I was absolutely going to crush it. He went from super anti home birth to very much pro home birth for somebody that wants a home birth. Okay, any support you really rated in terms of supplements, teas, acupuncture, Chinese medicine? I said this in the birth story. Guys, I did everything. I didn't do the dates because one of my midwives was like, Monica, fuck the dates. They have so much sugar. If you don't like them, don't have them. And, this is coming from someone that's like had a bunch of children themselves. They've been a midwife for a long time. Yeah, there's like a little bit of research that dates help, but there's also a million other things that also help your cervix to dilate. And they have had plenty of patients, and I know people that have done all the fucking dates, all the teas, everything, and they've had an extremely long labor, or their body hasn't gone into labor or whatever it is. And they did all the dates. And I really trusted my intuition through my whole pregnancy. And I could not do the fucking dates. You probably remember Instagram stories about it. I'm like, they look like dead cockroaches. They're so sweet. They made me feel like kind of sick eating them because there was just so much sugar in them. I didn't want to do it. And I really trusted that I didn't need them. And so I tried them for like a day. And I think I did like 2 in one day was the max that I could do. And I was just like, nope, I'm not doing it. I don't need them. And so there wasn't particularly anything that I felt like, put me into labor. There was a specific tea that my midwife gave me that she wanted me to take, not just because of labor, but actually it helps with hemorrhaging after labor. So, because it has alfalfa in it. So I was taking that because and that was like, they were up my ass about that, and up my ass about prenatal supplements and movement and healthy eating and lots of leafy greens and lots of meat and all of that. So they were the thing. I was really focusing on my health nutritionally and on movement because those things really help. There was a tincture that they also recommended for me to use that I can't remember the name of, but I will have all of that for the postpartum. I can put that one in the postpartum masterclass because it also is good for nursing. I did take that. Did it help? I don't know, because I can't compare it to, a labor without it, and my next labor, I'm not going to not take that tincture, for example, and be like, oh, let's see, because also the next labor is typically faster and easier because your body's done it once. It's not then actually a fair analysis for me to be like, oh, so the tincture didn't work. Because it's like, well, actually, was it the tincture or was it just like the fact that it's a second labor? You know what I mean? So it's really hard to know, does anything actually work or not? But I was doing the red raspberry leaf tea as well. And I will say, I had a lot of prodromal labor, like I shared with you guys in the first part of the episode. And so I had a lot of labor symptoms, cramping, contractions, that kind of thing, well before I went into labor, which is a really quote unquote good thing. It's not necessarily bad if you don't. My, best friend that went into labor a couple days early a week early for their son, she had nothing and she had a quick labor, and that was her first baby in a hospital, fully unmedicated, and she had a very quick labor, and she wasn't doing these tinctures that I was doing. She did do the dates. She was doing the red raspberry leaf, but it wasn't like there's some magic thing that makes the baby come out faster, if that makes sense. Oh, that's not what I was saying. I was saying that she had no pre-labor symptoms. That's what I was saying. She had nothing beforehand. I had a lot. So my midwives are really happy with that because they were like, the more that your body does with all the uterine contractions and everything before you go into labor, the less it has to do in labor because it's prepped and ready. So let's say, for example, so my labor was like 22 hours, I think. Had I not done what I had done and had my body not had that prodromal labor, my labor could have been a lot longer. You don't know. You really can't compare your labor to anybody else's or even to yourself, I feel like, and to if you are having your second kid, can you even really compare it to your first? I don't really think you can. Okay, what courses do you recommend taking to have a great birth? So I did take the Pain-Free Birth course by Karen. Oh, I can't remember her last name. I did take that Pain-Free Birth course. I didn't finish it. I just did parts of it that helped me to understand the pain, what is it called? Like the fear, pain, tension cycle or something, of basically when fear and pain, then your body goes into more tension, blah, blah, blah. A lot of what she shared, I already knew only because I had understood birth for a very, very long time. And I also was very connected to my intuition, and I knew how to surrender, and just like the whole physiological birth was something that I already knew about. It's always good to brush up on things. So I'm very glad I took that course. And then the other course that I like semi did, which I just learned a few things. And I'm very much in the mindset of like, you could learn one thing and put the value on that one thing of like $1 million. Like if that helps you during labor and that's all you got from the course, then the course was worth it. You don't need to get every single little bit from the course that you think you're meant to get and like check off every tick box on the fucking website page. If there's one thing that you got from it, it's worth it because your life is still better from that one thing that you got from it. The other course was, and I also really recommend her book. I think I have a book list. Mama Natural is pregnancy week by week. And it's like the book, and she has a program. And I also did that program. Well, like partly. And there's like lactation sections in there. There was just like some good little bits. There was birth stories. So again, I found that course to be helpful. You know, if you have a lot of reworking to do in your mindset about birth and about the fact that it can be a really beautiful experience, then definitely do these courses and probably do even more. But they're the two courses that I did. I've also heard good things from Built to Birth, and I did watch a lot of her YouTube videos as well and listen to her birth story and that kind of thing. I just ended up feeling like between the few books that I had read and also those couple of courses, it was just redundant. Like everyone was saying the same stuff because like it was all true. And it was like, okay, you just have to embody it. The thing that really helped though, that I would recommend everybody do, whether you are having a home birth or whether you're having a hospital birth, if you want to have the best birth experience, is go to a birth class. So Hal and I did a childbirth class. It was a whole day on a weekend, and every couple in that room, there was 6 of us or 7 of us, 7 couples. Every couple in that room was having a hospital birth, bar us. That class helped Hal to be like really glad, because this was still in the kind of like the beginning phases of him like being more okay with the home birth. That class made him really happy that we are doing a home birth, because a lot of the things that they were worried about, like speaking up for themselves, not being shut down, like trying to navigate hospital policies, like the fact that like you're quote unquote not allowed to eat and drink during labor, which, and don't quote me on this, she was basically saying that actually they've changed the protocol on that. And you can look it up online and it's a full thing, and to like print it out, because a lot of the nurses and doctors like don't even know that the protocol's been updated, that you can actually eat and drink during labor. Because when you think about it, if someone's been in a car accident and they've, you know, been driving home from a restaurant, they have food in their stomach. The reason why they don't want you to eat and drink is because in case you have to go into surgery. But it's like, okay, but how many people do they do surgeries on that have just been eating and drinking because of like an emergency? So anyway, like do your own research on that, or ask, you know, the teacher in your class. But that was really helpful in terms of like different positions. And I knew a lot of it. And she actually ended up being our night doula as well. And she asked me about it and I like why it was so helpful. And I said, it actually wasn't because I like learned something crazy new. I learned a few things, but it was actually helpful because it just gave me the confidence in Hal, because he had then he'd learned what I already knew. We were on the same page and we had an opportunity to like practice a few labor supporting moves. That's what I found really helpful. And it was just like confidence building going into the birth experience. So I would really recommend, out of every course, every book, go to a class. Obviously speak to the woman running the class beforehand to make sure that like you're aligned with the values. Like I spoke to her beforehand to make sure that she was like, you know, quote unquote pro home birth, and like what her values were about birth, that she was really promoting a physiological birth, that kind of thing. But she did, of course, go through like epidural, C-section, worst case scenario. Like we went through all of that so that we were all mentally prepared. And also so we were all educated, fully educated on all of our options. Like Ina May talks about this in her book, which I highly recommend reading. And I didn't know this until I read this in the book, but like the cascade effect of getting induced. And that like if you get induced, the contractions are not the same feeling as natural contractions. And because they're more intense, then it's more likely and more babies go into distress because they're not your body's normal contractions. So the baby can't deal with it. Then because you're in distress, then it's like, okay, now this is an emergency. You're more likely to have a C-section. I really was like, those little things that I learned made me really be like doing everything I could to get the baby out of me also, because my mum went to 42 weeks with me. And so I was just like, I don't want to go to 42 weeks and then be like made to go to the hospital because I can no longer have a home birth, which, by the way, for anyone that doesn't know, I don't know if this is the case everywhere, but at least in Georgia, I found this out from my midwife because I was very nervous about that towards the end. When you hit 42 weeks, you can go and get a certain scan. I don't know the name of it. And they will scan like the placenta or something to make sure it's still working. And it buys you 3 more days. And then after those 3 days, you can get another scan and it buys you 3 more days so that like you can have a home birth basically. And you don't have to get induced because we know everything's fine in there. So just like something to note in case you're in that same boat and you're freaking out. Once Rachel explained that to me, that really took a lot of pressure off, like, get this fucking baby out. It was like 2 days later after that appointment that I went into labor, because I was so scared about going to 42 weeks and then being made to go to the hospital and get induced because I really, really, really didn't want that. So she helped with that too. Okay, so the best tool or thing you did for pain relief, the absolute best pain relief, but pain is not the right word, but we'll just use it for this case, was my husband. Hal was my painkiller. I shared this in part 1. Every time Hal had to leave the room to let the dogs out, to get me water, to go to the bathroom, to get himself some food, that next contraction was so much more intense than when he was there holding me, speaking to me, just there with me. Like I just wanted him there all the time. Doesn't mean don't have a doula. I'm a very big advocate for having a doula. I will have one for my next birth because of what I shared in part 1. But that was the absolute best painkiller, is having your husband that you can fully surrender to. So on the back of that, you need to learn how to regulate your nervous system so that when your body wants to go into like a stress response, you do not. You stay calm and grounded, because for most people, if you feel that amount of intensity in your body, you are going to go tight. You are going to like be clutching on and holding on and not allowing yourself to relax, because relaxation feels like the opposite of what you want to do in your body. Okay. Like birth is all a mental game. The whole thing is a mental game, way more than physical. You don't have to do anything physical. You just got to fucking relax, but you need your mental state in order to relax. Learning how to surrender and relax during things that you don't want to relax to, biggest thing. You know what I used to do, or what I did during my pregnancy, is every time I would poo, I would practice relaxing and like fully opening and like letting the poo out. Sorry, TMI, but I'm giving you the advice, versus pushing the poo out. So that was even a little way of me continuously training my body, where when I wanted to kind of like tense, relax. Always, always, always. And then through that prodromal labor, I would do that too. I was using it as constant practice, learning to surrender, having a super regulated nervous system, and knowing how to regulate your nervous system. Massive, massive, massive things. They were the biggest painkillers. Oh, and then the other thing, I need to reach out to this. Hal bought lol this like Therabody thing on sale because he was like, oh, let's just like try it out. It was like this wrap that goes around your lower back. It has red light, a vibration, and heat. When I tell you I was screaming for this thing, I was screaming for this thing. I had it on me basically the whole labor, and we didn't buy it for it. It was amazing. It was so hot on my back. It was fabulous. It would vibrate, which would just help me like stop focusing on the sensation so much, because it would just kind of like mitigate it a bit. And then the red light also, I didn't use the red light as much, but I used the red light as well, which just helped probably with just like a little bit of the pain, potentially some of the inflammation, but I wasn't so much focused on the red light as I was the heat and the vibration. It was like, I will be getting that for my next labor. It was 100% my saving grace. And I keep meaning to reach out to them, but I just haven't had time on maternity leave. So I'll be getting the team to reach out to them, because I'm like, you guys need to sell that as a labor tool, because it was absolutely incredible. I'm going to try and see whether I can get you guys a discount code. So I will let you know if you can. And if you are going into labor soon and you want a discount code, maybe just if you haven't heard about it, or if there isn't one updated in the description or something, or on like one of my blogs, then you can email us and see if we've managed to get one. Or you can email the company and say, give Monica Yates one. Some of you might have been seeing that I am posting on Instagram the herbs that I have been taking for postpartum, but I was also taking them to help with fertility before we conceived. And we did conceive on the first try. And I've been taking them a while for my adrenals, for my gut. I am such a fan of herbalism. You guys know that about me, like TCM, herbalism, it's like so up my alley. Anyway, One of my friends, Paul, he has an incredible business called PK's, and the herbalist, he's a herbalist for it, makes these incredible herb blends, tinctures is what you would call it actually, tinctures for all sorts of different things. Whether you're struggling with adrenal fatigue, then you're going to want to get the Wake Me Dead is what it's called. His names are really quirky because like he's really quirky and a really funny guy. So it fits. Blood bank is also really good, especially if you've just given birth. You can have it on hand. So before you even give birth, I had blood bank on hand. Blood bank's also really good if you have a light period or a really heavy period, or have gone through any kind of like accident where you've lost a lot of blood or surgery. Blood banks also, they're really good for energy. There's a ton. You also can get ones for fertility for women and then also ones for men. And there's also the lactation one that I'm currently using right now called Yummy Mummy. So my code is Monica20 and that will get you 20% off. I don't think they do not ship outside the US. So for anybody in the US, I would highly, highly, highly recommend getting PKs for any herbs and use the code Monica20. And if you're coming to one of my events in the US, then whilst you're here, order a bunch and then you could take them back to wherever you live. Next question. How did you deal with the potentially negative family reactions to your birth plan? Really good question. One is that I didn't tell people that I knew were going to like have something to say about it. Two, I didn't let people have something to say about it because like they're not the one giving birth. I am. And that was really it. Like I didn't leave room for there to be like a conversation. I wasn't leaving room for somebody's negative reactions, but I didn't tell a lot of people. So when people in the beginning were like, oh, where are you giving birth? It was like, oh, we haven't decided yet. Or like, yeah, figuring it out. Like just blasé answer. Okay. Because I didn't want people's opinions and people to put their thoughts in. Now you might have a family that's very much outspoken and going to tell you what to do. So you really need to protect your energy with this. This is why I did not tell you guys about my birth plan. I did not tell you the due date. I did not tell you what we were doing for the birth. I think I said that it was, I'm wanting an unmedicated natural birth, but that was all I said because I was not open to anybody's birth plans. I mean, to anyone's birth thoughts or opinions. I even had people, me just sharing, oh, I'm going to my midwife's appointment today. I had people trying to tell me in my DMs that a midwife is not a doctor and that it's dangerous for me to go to a midwife and that I should be seeing an OB. Which is interesting given the rest of the world besides the US, you go to see a midwife more often than not than an OB. In Australia, you're seeing a midwife. You can see an OB. You're going to see an OB if you have a high-risk pregnancy or if you need a C-section, but you're going to see a midwife. And that's not looked down upon. The UK, midwives are all through the hospitals, right? And that's what I've been forever. But anyway, and so, people were just really wanting to give their unsolicited advice, even just from me being like, I'm seeing a midwife. And it just, I just thought it was like such a just weird, gross, unfortunate thing that women think that it's appropriate to just like put other women down in any kind of way, but also just like give unsolicited advice, especially when it comes to somebody's pregnancy and birth and all of that. And I did a whole episode for that reason on unsolicited advice. So if you think you can give me unsolicited advice in my DMs about my home birth, you're going to be sent that episode because that's literally for you. And yeah, so I didn't tell a lot of people in the beginning. I told my friends and stuff that would respect me no matter what, even if they wouldn't do it themselves. I also, when I did start telling people, especially when they were like, oh, where are you giving birth? Like when I was like, about to pop, it would just be, we're having a home birth. And if they would just say like, oh my gosh, you're having a home birth. Yep. Like it wasn't open for discussion, right? Unless somebody was genuinely curious and like excited and like, oh my God, that's amazing. Wait, like, aren't you scared? Can you tell me about it? And it was genuinely like they were curious and whatnot. I would tell them about it. And it was beautiful to be able to share my positive outlook on birth. But other than that, people didn't need to know. And I haven't seen a lot of family members still since giving birth, waiting for that to be the case, like around Thanksgiving and stuff, especially with some family members that were like, I said this in part one, the safest place is to have a hospital birth. Like people that have home births are idiots. It's so dangerous to do that and whatnot. Because the reality is it wasn't just like, oh, I was lucky. No, it wasn't lucky at all. If you look at the stats, it's what it says. We talked about that in part one. And I'll have my midwife on if you guys are interested and would find that helpful. And my midwife, by the way, is not anti-hospital birth because she actually was saying how like it's so good that the hospitals are here, because it gets to a point where you have a long labor where it's inhumane to continue without an epidural. That's a conversation for another time. My advice for you though is to not have a conversation about it. If somebody is like trying to tell you their opinion, you can just simply say, I appreciate that you're probably trying to protect me and look out for me, but this is not up to you and I'm not open to having this conversation. So please don't bring it up again. And that's it. I really, when I was, pregnant, I really protected my energy, and I really chose to not speak about some things with some people, because I just simply, it wasn't like I would even felt like they could sway me. It was just like, I'm not fucking wasting my breath because you're not going to see my point and I don't need to prove myself to you. So that's my advice. And then, I basically said to Hal, like, you're more than welcome to tell people. And he like learnt his shit. Like he would spit off statistics. Like I was the proud wife. There was a family dinner we were at one time with some of his cousins and family. And somebody was saying like, oh, isn't it dangerous? Blah, blah, blah. And I was just so proud of how he was like so educated on it and explaining everything to them. So you could also leave it up to your spouse if that feels better. Okay, next question. How to keep your mind positive and not fall into the fear of the unknown. I was saying this to a friend that is not having a home birth, but they were talking about birth and whatnot. I think that a lot of women are choosing to get induced these days, like by choice, because they want to know the date they're giving birth, because they don't want to like just surrender to the unknown, right? Because the unknown is scary. And it's us trying to grip onto control all the time. And obviously there are like separate reasons for inductions and whatnot, but I'm just talking about like people wanting to book it in so that they know the day they're giving birth or, something like that. I believe that the reason why babies don't come on their due date and why we really never know when a baby's actually going to come is because it forces you into surrender in that kind of sense, so that you are not anxiously, you kind of are anxiously awaiting their arrival, like once you get to that due date. But I mean more like you're not, what's the word? There isn't this like lead up to this date where it's like this build up of nerves, of anxiousness, of overthinking. It's like it just kind of gets sprung upon you and then you're in it before you know it. So I said to my friend, because she was like also worried about the unknown. And I was like, what if that is the whole point? What if the whole point of birth and not knowing our due date and not knowing what's going to happen and all of that is actually to help us? Because if you knew how your birth was going to be, and if you knew what birth was really like before you went into it the first time, you may not want to do it because you haven't experienced also the actual feeling of giving birth and then the euphoria that comes with it. And that it's like that makes you want to redo it, right? And if somebody that's why it's like when people explain birth, it's just like horrific, painful, awful. Like I felt like my body was going to tear in half. I didn't feel that. And that's not necessarily how it feels at all. Like don't listen to that because it's not the actual true sensation when you're in it. And obviously of course it is for some people, but you got to remember that like for those people, it's probably also accompanied by an unideal environment around them, harsh lighting, like beeping monitors. They don't have a good mindset. There's doctors like scaring them about shit. Their husband isn't supporting them in the way that they need support. They don't have a good mindset around birth. Like there's a lot of other factors that are then causing them to have that experience. But birth in and of itself is not that experience. It is the way that I describe it, because people are like, oh my God, like, friends and family, like, how did you do that, Monica? And I say to them, it truly, like having an unmedicated birth and going through that and feeling everything, it was the most human experience a human could ever have. It was the most raw, primal, just human experience. Like that's what made it so beautiful, is that I had never felt so, I guess, just like animalistic and human before. And people like, oh, that's like so beautiful when you explain it like that. I'm like, truly, I say to women that want to get an epidural and everything, I'm like, you do you. But if I can give you one thing, even if you just feel 10 minutes of contractions, give yourself that gift, because there is nothing else that will feel more human and more like you experiencing the full human experience, like being in labor. And it is unknown. Thank fucking God it's the unknown, right? Because like If at 6 a.m. I knew I had until 10:05 p.m. until he was coming, I would be like, I can't fucking do this for another 16 hours. That's why you don't know what is ahead. And I think that's actually a really good thing. So make friends with the unknown and actually see the unknown as a good thing, not a fear of the unknown. That's also what I was saying before though. Like the more that you do the work on yourself before you go into birth, and not just like read a fucking book. I mean like whatever, like my work that I'm embodied in, that I, do in Queen Alchemy and Her Year and the Immersion, right? Like they're not birth programs. I cannot tell you how much that helped me through pregnancy, through labor, through postpartum. And even right now, I cannot tell you, like even before today, I had like my first like kind of semi work day, right? Like I'm dressed, I'm ready to go. I had a meeting with Olivia so she could just like tell me what the hell has happened over the last 3 months, give me like just the overview of everything. So I'm kind of like, okay, I know where we're at now. And I could hear him crying. I could hear Tripp crying. My mom is here. She's looking after him. He's been fed. I know that like if she needs me, she'll come and get me. But like she's done this 3 times before. Like she knows what she's doing. And my stomach was just in knots. And had I not known how to get my stomach out of knots and how to regulate and how to like not be in a really nervous, anxious, stressed state where like my primal brain was just like, I don't know how to describe it, but mums will know what it feels like. It's just like, it's not mum guilt because I love being back at work and he's like so well looked after and having way more fun than he would have with me half the time anyway. She hasn't seen him in forever and she's just like infatuated. Anyway, I can't describe the feeling, but like I was just like in knots and I knew how to unknot my stomach so that I could come on this podcast. And I'm, have now been like recording this between these 2 episodes a long time. Whether it's fear of unknown, whether it's fear of the pain, whether it's fear of going to the hospital, whether it's fear of tearing anything, I cannot tell you how much my work impacted my ability to show up the way that I wanted to show up during labor and then delivery and postpartum and all that. Okay, how much did your home birth cost? So we swapped midwives halfway through, so we ended up paying double. But the reason why I did that was because I was like, if I don't have my ideal birth with my first midwife, I will always wonder whether I would have had my ideal birth with the other midwife. And can you really put, and this is the answer is no, can you really put a price tag on having your ideal birth? Because of how much we know that impacts postpartum, how much we know that impacts the child's nervous system, and then of course how they are as a kid, and obviously how much that impacts you. So it was around just under 10 grand, I think, off the top of my head between the two. But the midwives that I ended up going with, they were $5,000, I want to say. I think $5,000. Maybe it was $6,000, something like that. When it came to like blood tests that I got and any ultrasounds that I got, the ultrasound I paid out of pocket because I wasn't going private for them. They didn't take health insurance here in the US, that is, because the US system just fucking sucks. But like a few blood tests I got, they were covered by our insurance. But they also were like such small amounts in the whole grand scheme of things. But also if I ended up going to the hospital, then that would have been covered by insurance. Yeah, that our home birth cost that much. Well, I guess actually that's the midwives. Then the doula was about $2,000. We had a postpartum doula as well. And I want to say on the postpartum doula, I cannot recommend doing this enough, getting a postpartum doula, especially if you don't have really good family support. So if your parents are 80 years old and you're actually looking after them, they're not helpful. My parents are extremely hands-on with him. They are fit. They are healthy. They can, be getting him, like be picking him up off the floor and in like a deep lunge themselves. They are young for grandparents. They're in their like late 50s. So all of those things, and just the fact that they're like are really good cooks, and like my dad's in the garden all the time and whatnot, like they're just very hands-on parents. And I know for some people they don't have hands-on parents. And so having the parents over straight after you've given birth is like not the most helpful thing. We'll talk about this in the postpartum class that I mentioned, but I will say having a postpartum doula was a game changer, and it was not as expensive as you would think. And instead of buying a bajillion stuffed animals for your kid or whatnot, or putting that on your registry, you could definitely put many of these things on your registry, whether it's a doula fund, a postpartum doula fund, that kind of thing. I've actually even thought about for people that I know, women that I know that are having babies, actually just buying them the postpartum doula support for 12 hours or whatever, and you break it up into chunks because of just how impactful it is, especially if you don't have really good family help from your parents or your siblings or whatnot. Okay, did the baby cut the vaginal opening? Oh, I already talked about that on part 1. So I've heard a lot of women say that should happen. Did the baby cut the vaginal opening more or not? I heard a lot of women saying that should happen. I don't know why it doesn't mean, I think there's this misconception, right? Of like, and my midwife could talk about this more if there's enough of a demand to bring her on. You like having an episiotomy, for example, it doesn't make the vaginal opening bigger. The vaginal canal is the size of the canal, right? For the baby to come out. All it does, whether you tear or whether you have an episiotomy, is it just means your vaginal opening isn't going to stretch as much as it would because you've cut it, right? So now you've cut into the space between your vaginal opening and your what's the correct word for like your bumhole, your anus? I don't know, rectal. I don't know what the correct term is for that they use in these situations. Anyway, but I don't agree that should happen. I mean, look, this is the thing with birth. A lot of people will say all these shoulds, and it's like, well, is that what you've been led to believe? What we've all been like programmed to believe as women? Like birth is painful. Nope, not necessarily. Or, if you have a big baby, this is a lot of questions that if you have a big baby, then you're not going to be able to have a natural birth, or it's going to be really painful and you're definitely going to tear. No, the Yvonne, my midwife assistant that I mentioned in part 1, she had a 12-pound baby and didn't tear. Like that's a really common story. I read a lot of birth stories from women that had really big babies over 10 pounds because I was semi-nervous that was going to happen for me. And they didn't tear. They had their most beautiful labor, most pain-free labor, not because the baby was big, but because they did the prep work. And it's not about the size of the baby. There are plenty of people that tear from having a 6-pound baby. Okay, so for context, Tripp was 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Okay, and what my midwife explained to me is like the head of a baby that's 8 pounds versus the head of a baby that's 10 pounds, like that circumference, is not actually most of the time even different. The extra weight just comes from like the fat that they're holding or their bone density, right? And it comes from their actual body, not their head. The thing that's stretching the canal, like your vaginal opening the most, is their head. That's the hardest thing because it's not soft. Once the head's out, even if you have a 10-pound baby or a 12-pound baby, the rest is just soft. It doesn't hurt at all for the rest of the baby's body to come out. It's the head that's actually like the most difficult part. Once that's out, the work is done. So when she explained that to me, I was like, oh, so I didn't become nervous anymore about I wasn't really nervous anyway because the prep work I did, but I was way less nervous. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, because that extra weight is just really coming from the body and the chubbiness of the baby or the length of the baby's limbs or whatnot. And that's not necessarily going to actually mean that your vaginal canal, your vaginal opening has to stretch more than what it would with an 8-pound baby, for example. So I would disagree saying that you should tear because I don't think that's true at all. Like what is the benefit of tearing? There really isn't a benefit of tearing if women can birth a baby and not tear. Obviously, it's more ideal to not tear because it's way less painful peeing and moving around and sitting for the next couple of weeks. Why did I have a doula? I had a doula because I knew that I wanted the expertise and support of a doula. And I also knew that my husband cannot do everything. And I also knew that a doula isn't just there for me. It's actually, the doula is also there for Hal. I actually initially got the doula more for Hal than me because I wanted Hal to be able to feel like he could rest, he could leave, he could regroup and go on a walk if he needed to, because I didn't know how he was going to be in birth. So I initially actually really wanted the doula for his support, not just my support. But it's also statistically shown that doulas, I mentioned this in the previous episode, that having a doula drastically decreases your risk of intervention. And so I knew that if I did have to go to the hospital, I would want the doula there to help reduce any unnecessary intervention, and also just to be my advocate, basically, especially because if we did have to go to the hospital, we don't know how Hal would react. And if he was in a freeze response, for example, or scattered, or just like so stressed about my livelihood that he would just potentially be like, do whatever, versus the doula could be like, well, actually, we know that these are Monica's wishes. Let's like, remember what we spoke about with this. This is actually what Monica could do. Do you want her to do this instead if I was not able to speak for myself, right? And so that's another reason why I wanted the doula, and absolutely priceless. And our doulas, like I said, I just think, $2,000 or around that for a doula, and they're looking after you the whole 9 months of pregnancy. You can phone them whenever you want. You can email them. At least our doulas, like they are there for full emotional support during your whole pregnancy, and then your labor and your delivery, and even after birth as well. They're there for your support. And I just think $2,000 is, frankly, in my mind, so cheap. Like, and it's too cheap for in my mind, like one of the most important jobs in the world in supporting women through this. So that's why I had a doula. And then other questions were a lot about tearing and like how to potentially prevent that. So I spoke to you guys about the ring of fire in the first episode, and like that really like you want to hold the baby there if you can. And then the second thing is like having your midwife or whatnot do that perineal support. So that is another thing. But then also I did do perineal massage as well. I really didn't go balls to the wall with it. Like I kind of thought, oh my God, I should have done more. Like when I was getting closer to labor, and I just like couldn't be fucked, to be honest, but I did do it. And I also really did it. Because it was good to actually start to get used to the sensation. When you are doing the perineal or perineum, I think it's interchangeable words, but the perineal massage, and you use like a certain kind of wand, or you can use your fingers or whatnot, and you're pulling the vaginal opening skin in like these different directions, especially pulling the back of your vaginal opening further back, like really stretching that part, it feels like a burning sensation. And my midwife said that, they were like, there isn't actually that much research to show that, doing and even like anecdotally, they were like, hasn't been that much of a correlation between the women that did a lot of perineum massage having less tearing, blah, 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 and those that didn't having more tearing. But what a lot of people had shared is that it got them used to the sensation, so that when the sensation came, it wasn't like, oh my fucking God, no, I felt this before. They knew to hold it, because again, they'd practiced holding that sensation in their body and holding that sensation in their nervous system before even going into labor. So I did a lot of that, of just holding the sensation. I would just do it in the shower. Okay. And then did you choose to leave the placenta connected for a while before cutting? Okay. I talked about that in the part 1. So yes. And then was there any fear going into it? No, I was so excited to give birth. I've always been so excited for labor, so excited to give birth. Like I've said a million times, like I did not have a negative, story about birth in my head. And I'll say this too. Hal at the end was like, so was that an orgasmic birth? No, I did not have an orgasmic birth. Okay. But pain is the wrong word to describe it as well. And like I said, there were many times throughout it where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Take me to the hospital, like give me an epidural, cut me the fuck open, and blah, blah, blah. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And Hal would say, and all the midwife would say, let's go to the hospital. And I'd be like, no, because I knew so deep down, I was so committed. And I do recommend this if you're having an unmedicated birth or a home birth, whatever it is. If you want unmedicated, you have to have every single part of you behind you, in my opinion anyway, in my experience, so that even when you're saying out loud, I want to go to the hospital, you don't actually mean it. Like I was saying that because I just needed to get the thoughts out. Like I spoke about in part 1, Anime talks about this, of like getting the fears out, like get the things out of your body. So I would say these things. I didn't want to act on them, but I just needed to like not keep these things inside. If you are craving more softness, magnetism, and ease in your life, but your body still feels like it is stuck in control, tension, or emotional burnout, you need to be inside Muse. It is a new masterclass that we are doing that I am so excited for. And this is not just another mindset training. Muse is a full body activation that shows you how to unlock your feminine energy, heal trauma at the root, and shift your nervous system into full receivership. So inside this masterclass, I'm going to be breaking down why trauma is the number one thing blocking your magnetism and how to finally clear it, the 4 flavors of the feminine and how to embody your unique essence, how to rewire your nervous system so that receiving love, money, and success feels safe, the polarity shifts that make your man step up, lead, and cherish you, how feminine surrender makes you more powerful, not less powerful, and why your manifestations aren't landing. And a little hint, it is not about your vision board, it is in your body. So Muse is where you are going to be able to stop chasing, forcing, and proving, and really start becoming the woman that attracts everything with ease. So make sure that you are registered. You can save your seat by registering with the link below. And trust me when I say this is the shift your feminine energy has been waiting for. So I will see you there. So was I afraid going into it? No. Something that kept me going also through the hard, like the intensity of it and the hard moments and transition, was knowing that a pain-free birth was possible, that an orgasmic birth was possible, that women have pain-free births. I was not having a orgasmic birth. Okay. It was very intense. It was also just so beautiful that I can look back on more so, right? During it, it was incredibly hard, but I would do it again a million times over. Not just because like, oh, I have my baby and I'm so in love, but because like it was the most empowering, I have so many goosebumps. It was the most empowering human, like I was saying before, thing I'd ever gone through that I will ever experience, ever, ever, ever. It was so beautiful. And like, I found this out later that Hal was, having to remove himself sometimes to like gather himself because he was like shedding tears throughout it because he was so in awe of me. And he was so proud of me. And he would keep telling me it throughout it and afterwards of just how proud he was and how in awe he was. And I am so proud of myself for going and like for pushing through and continuing to be committed to the desire that I so deeply wanted. But I will say I completely fucking get it. If you tried an unmedicated birth and once you got to like, 6 centimeters, you're like, fuck this, give me the epidural. I get it. There's absolutely no shame if you chose to do that. This is just, again, my experience. So there was no fear. What was I saying though? But what kept me going and what kept me surrendering and not going into tension was knowing that I could have a fully pain-free birth. And for some women, I shared this with my night doula. She was like, for some women, I feel like having that mindset they could then think, oh, I'm a failure because I didn't get that, which I completely get. That was a good perspective that she offered. For me, I don't feel like a failure because I didn't get that. I can get that the next birth. And if I don't, like whatever. For me, it helped me continue to relax and surrender and open because if other women can do it, I can do it. That was a really big thing. And then how did you decide / determine the best practitioners for you? I really did it based on like the energy that they would bring to the birth. I really loved my second midwife and like that practice because they were extremely educated. Like I got a massive binder with everything possible. Beth had done this for like a bajillion years. I felt so safe in her care. She also really was constantly like, what does your intuition say? What does your intuition say? What does your intuition say? And she was constantly reminding me of that and not always just being like, well, the books say blah, 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 because the book isn't always right. And I think that anecdotal evidence actually is more true than like scientific evidence because like, people fund those things. And also like, you just don't fully know like how good the research actually is and who funded it. And like, whether they weren't able to include certain things in the studies because like, big pharma doesn't want it, So like anecdotal evidence is everything to me. And obviously someone that has had more years doing this and done it more is going to have more anecdotal evidence than somebody that hasn't. My initial midwife was much newer. She'd been a doula for I think 12 years, but she was new to being a midwife. And I didn't really have any options because there isn't that many midwives in Atlanta. And I had apparently waited like too long to get a midwife. I was like 10 weeks pregnant when I got her in, but now I know next time, well, now I have my midwife, but like as soon as I'm pregnant, like they're the first person that knows because they book out so far in advance because so many more people are opting for home births and there isn't enough midwives to like support that, if that makes sense, which is why I didn't initially have my first option available. So I basically just was out of options and I was like, you know what, she feels good enough and I feel really confident in myself. So like, let's just roll with this. So that's why I chose her in the beginning, but then I swapped to the second midwives and I was so happy with them because they also just really aligned with my values. And their energy was just very calm. They were mellow. They could be like loud and energetic, but they were very mellow, just so chill. And like, I want that when I'm giving birth. I don't want someone that is really loud or high strung or too energetic because just like in that environment, you just don't want that. That's kind of what I looked for when I was my midwives and just very much trusting my intuition because like the whole thing is just like this birth and pregnancy. It's just all, I think, intuition. And you want someone in your birth room that just feels right. Not necessarily that's the most educated in the room, but that just feels right for you. So I trusted that. Oh, any quiet days movement wise? This is like, I guess, more of a pregnancy question. Wait or go to doc. We did have one scare. He was a very active baby. There was one night where I realized I got into bed and I was like, holy shit, I haven't felt him in like, God, it was like 6 hours or something. Now it could have been because I had a really busy day and I wasn't paying too much attention. But at this point, he was kicking me so much that it would catch me off guard, right? Even if I was like on a call or something, I would like flinch because it would kind of shock me, if that makes sense. And so there was one day and it was very scary and I called Hal up and we sat by the bed for like 30 minutes waiting for him to kick, nothing. So we phoned Beth and deep down intuitively, I was like, he is okay. But of course, first baby, it was fucking scary. And my brain was going into dark places. And Hal stayed so cool, calm and collected because he also intuitively was like, babe, I know he's here. And I was talking to him and like, in terms of like psychically, and he was fine. And I would keep saying like kick and he just like wasn't doing anything. So I phoned my midwife and she was like, get into a really hot bath and you need to like eat a bunch of sugar basically. So she wanted me to like drink a bunch of juice. We didn't have any. So Hal got Greek yogurt and poured a ton of honey on it. And I got into a hot bath and ate a ton of honey and it took a while and he eventually started kicking. And the reason why she wasn't super worried initially because that's why she wanted to do this and we had her on the phone, like to get in the bath first because she's like, it has happened before where she's like, we know when babies are out of utero, they can, like newborn babies, they won't wake up to feed. They go into a really deep sleep sometimes. Some babies after labor, they sleep for like 10 hours straight, you know, and you don't want that, but they'll do that sometimes. If their birth weight's too low, you don't want that. And so that's why she wasn't too worried initially. And so obviously it just went to like a really deep sleep and no amount of me poking him or anything, because usually that would get him going if I was poking him. No amount of it was kind of waking him up. So everything was totally fine. But my initial midwife, my other midwife, Tracy, that was meant to be there, she is actually a midwife from the UK and she's practiced in the hospitals. And she what she said, which was interesting, is like, you know, if you were in the UK, I would have immediately said, go to the emergency room. Now, I didn't want to go to the emergency room because I was worried that they would then be like, oh my God, you're having a home birth, like, and just like find problems that don't exist with the baby. We'd also chosen to like stop having so many scans as I got bigger. We did the anatomy scan. We knew everything was good. Every time I would go for a scan, I just left feeling miserable because I was constantly being told, your baby's so big and like, oh, do you eat a lot of sugar? And because they were basically trying to imply that I have gestational diabetes, I didn't have gestational diabetes. My blood sugar was like absolutely perfect. I did like blood tests over like a blood prick thing over like 3 days. And the baby wasn't actually big, right? And something that I learned is that ultrasounds have a very high, they have a high margin of error. Maybe some of you have even experienced this. Like my mom was told that I was 8 pounds from an ultrasound. I came out 10 pound 6, right? I was told this baby's going to be absolutely huge, blah, blah, blah. Like a few times when he was like, my God, not even 22 weeks, right? Inside me, he wasn't absolutely huge. He was 8 pounds, 6 ounces, very normal baby size. So in my mind, I was like, oh my God, you're tiny, because I was expecting a 10 pound baby. So we ended up going for ultrasounds. And so I was worried that if we went to the emergency room, they would find something that didn't actually exist or just like freak me out or whatnot. But actually now I know that you can, even if you're having a home birth, you can go to the labor and delivery section, I think is what Tracy described as in the US. And you don't need to be like put into the system or anything. And they can just do whatever it's called to like check the baby's heart rate. You do not need to be kept overnight, nothing. You take the piece of paper with you and then you give us the piece of paper basically. So now I know that for next time, for the next baby, if that was to happen again, I would do that. But that's one time that I had a little scare. Okay, what else? Okay, did I know when I was going through transition? No, I had zero idea when I was going through transition. Obviously, when I was in the bathtub and splashing around, that's when I was going through transition because I went from that 4 centimeters to 7. And I had zero idea that I was going through transition. Obviously now looking back, it was like, duh, but I went so quickly from 4 to 7 that I obviously wasn't really aware. And also it was very unexpected because the bath typically slows down labor. For me, it didn't, which was amazing. And I give all the credit to Hal on that because he wasn't letting it slow down labor. Like he was getting me so to go into each contraction and open up and really go into it versus like kind of resisting it all. So that was transition, and the splashing around, that energy movement is what really, really, really helped me. Obviously the heat and everything and having Hal there 1000%, but also like I described initially, that energy movement was a really big thing that helped me. Any questions around prepping to fall pregnant? I've done a conception episode, that you can listen to, and there's blog posts on that too. What helped you to stay most in the zone and surrendered? Honestly, my environment. Like your environment is such a big thing to factor in for your ideal birth, which is why I didn't want a hospital for me. I didn't want the bright lights. I didn't want the baby monitors. Honestly, having a fucking IV in me is more painful than birth for me. I am the worst patient in a hospital. I don't want an IV. I don't want anyone, like, I don't want the harsh lights. I don't want beeping monitors. I don't want you to check my fucking, like, I know I'm fine. And I knew that I didn't want restricted movement. And in a lot of hospitals, again, depends where you go. You can't have you have to have like fetal monitoring all the time. It depends on different policies and you're connected to a machine. Our childbirth educator, that class we took, said that like there are some hospitals that have like the Bluetooth ones, but you have to request them in advance and then they're not always available. So like don't get your hopes up too much. And I just like didn't want to fucking deal with any of that. So you can obviously have a hospital birth and it be great. My friend that I mentioned, something that she did was she wore a blindfold, and she was just like, she had her AirPods in, she wore a blindfold, and she was in the fucking zone. Like no one could get her out of it. Obviously, so music really helped her. Music definitely helped me, but I wasn't really paying attention that much to the music, but I know it helped. And then like the lighting, so the red lights, the dim lights, the heat definitely helped and just the water, the pressure of the water, the Therabody thing I mentioned to you guys, like the heat on my back, even just like a heat pack would be really good for that. But I think the vibration also really, really, really helped because I'd blasted on 3 and the heat was on 3. And then Hal constantly, he kept me in the zone. He kept me surrendered. He kept me going and just not having to worry about anything else. Like I had so much support around me that I wasn't having to worry about, is my drink bottle full? Have I had enough electrolytes? Like any of that. Like there was just so much available. Even little things like I wasn't worried about going into birth because I had watermelon stocked in the fridge. I knew what I wanted to eat after birth and it was right there in the fridge. Like, and there was so much detail written out in this birth plan. Like it was literally like 10 pages long. Hal had such strict instructions of like, when I go into labor, you're doing this, do this, do that. Like it was well planned out, right? We didn't use it all, but it was there. So I didn't have to worry about directing, controlling, leading, or anything like that. I was so surrendered because I knew how to surrender, and that's what I wanted. And that's also what Hal offered me. He was so incredible at leading during the birth. It was just amazing. And then for the points that you felt like you couldn't do it, was there any point that you felt like you couldn't do it? I kind of talked about that already. What helped you through? What helped me through? I know for some people it really helps to think about meeting your baby. Like that didn't help me through. Lol, that didn't help. What it was actually, and again, this is just what worked for me, was knowing how much, like how I would be so mad at myself if I gave up because of pain. Again, if you quote unquote gave up because of pain, I'm not saying that like oh my God, like shame on you. You are less than me. It's not what I'm saying. For me, I just knew I could do it. I knew I wanted to do it. And I didn't want, in my mind, I would have felt like I absolutely was pathetic if I went to the hospital because of pain, because of what I know from birth, that I am made for it, that I can do it, and that baby was in an optimal position for it. It wasn't like I was having back labor or something. No, that's like a whole other level. Just, I knew that I was going to feel so proud of myself on the other side. And that as soon as I was on the other side, this would be a blip in my life and that I would do it all over again, which I feel. You know, many women talk about that and it's true. It is so true. So like what really got me through it was Hal reminding me and me reminding myself of I won't feel this tomorrow. I won't be in this tomorrow. And that just kept reminding me of how temporary this is. Like, this is so temporary. This is so temporary. So I stayed very present rather than thinking about in 3 hours time. And then the other thing that helped me through, I mean, I keep saying it, but like Hal, oh, sorry, Jelly. Like Hal helped me through so much, the surrendering, the heat, the bath, the lights, the music, the opening my throat, like a lot of noise. It's funny looking back at the videos, I'm not as loud as I thought I was, but a lot of noise. And oh, there was something else that I figured out that really helped. What was it? It was changing from, what was it? It was changing a vocal note from like, must have been around about 1 p.m. because Jessica had just come back. And I basically figured out, because she was like checking in and I was like, I realized that it helps me to, I can't remember whether it was like not make so much noise or make a lower sound or an E instead of an ah or something. I can't remember it, but trust your body with that, right? Like I know courses will say like, do this sound, but actually for me, it didn't work and I changed something else or I made it a higher pitch than a lower pitch. I can't remember, but I trusted it and I went with it. And I just continuously was trying different things. And then when something worked, we kept using that until it didn't work anymore. Something that I really hated, really did not like, that a lot of people do like, is counter pressure on your back. It made things feel more intense for me. And actually it made it painful. It made it sharp, like intense pains versus just like the intensity, like just like an intense pressure. So I did not like that. So but like I will say one piece of advice I give to all of you is when you go into birth, do the fucking work to speak your truth. Because I just can't imagine not being able to say to my doula, because like there were times when I felt like, when like you go to the hairdresser and you feel bad for being like, actually, can you change this? I don't like it. Or like they give a suggestion and you're like, no, I don't want to do that. And you kind of feel awkward for saying it. Like you feel bad. Like, why the fuck do you feel bad? Like you're paying them, right? But it's just like we feel bad sometimes because we don't want to like offend them or whatever. And I noticed that in the very beginning when I was in labor, I felt bad for being like, no, I don't like that. Towards the end of it, I was just like screaming at everybody, basically. Well, not screaming at everybody, but I was doing what I was saying to you guys of like when they would change from saying, you are safe, and say something like, you got this, Monica. I'd be like, no, say you are safe. Like I would just, they're like, oh my God, okay, you are safe. So yeah, you need to speak your truth and you need to feel safe asking for what you want because that will really change the game for you. Okay. And then was Tripp communicating to you during labor? No, he wasn't. I was communicating with him, like talking to him during times if I needed like a break, for example, when the contractions were just like blending together. I think I was talking to him a little bit. No, we were not communicating with each other. I was so in the zone and so out of it. I don't think I would have been able to, even if I tried, to be honest. There's been a lot of questions on, oh wait, let me answer this one and then I'll wrap up with this last one. Okay. Did you do the deep throat technique on how to open your cervix? So those of you that have been in Queen Alchemy know that there is a technique where basically you deep throat your partner, like your man, during labor because it really opens your throat and it opens your cervix because your throat and your cervix are connected. No, I told Hal about that a long time ago in our relationship and he was like, absolutely, over my fucking dead body are you sticking my cock in your mouth during labor, because he's obviously where I'm just like bite it off. And I will say, when you're in labor, that is the last thing that you are thinking of. Like for me, at least, I know some women do it, and maybe the second time I could be like more like, oh, maybe I would do it, but he would not let me. But absolutely no, we did not do that. But having an open jaw, having like the sound is really important. I'm gonna have to ask my doula, and then I'll share it with you guys on like the postpartum class or something. Like, does she remember the change that I made with my sounds or something? I'll send her a text and see if she remembers, because obviously it was a while ago now. But like the sound is really important through your throat, and like an open, loose jaw creates an open, loose pelvic floor, which is what you want. You want your pelvic floor to be relaxed and get out of the fucking way. You don't need to push. Your baby's doing it for you, unless of course, you're on epidural or something. I don't know what that experience is like. But like feeling him come through the birth canal, it was that was the best bit of the whole birth. Like the very end is the best fucking bit. Like I would never want to miss out on that in a million years. It was just, oh my God, it was incredible. And he has been an extremely easy baby. Of course he cries. I can't settle him sometimes. Like he vomited, especially those early weeks. He would like puke randomly. I had a very fast letdown, so that ended up in a lot of vomits sometimes and whatnot. But he wasn't, and he isn't refluxy. He's not colicky. He settles very easily. He latched immediately. I had no breastfeeding problems. It didn't hurt. My nipples didn't hurt. He has like the perfect tongue posture. Everything has been literally a dream. Literally a dream. And I know that is partly because of his birth and his arrival for his nervous system and his energy and everything of coming into the world, and obviously how that imprints on us. I also know it's from the, prep work that I did mentally, my manifestations, my energetic work. I manifested my labor and delivery so much. I would visualize. I wasn't a nut about it. I didn't do it every day until from when I was like 10 weeks pregnant, but especially towards the end, when I had moments where I was visualizing that labor. I was visualizing it being easy and fun and opening. And was it like exactly like the visualization? No, but I know that visualization primed my body to get it as close to that as possible. And I also manifested and through visualization, a baby that was an easy latch. I was only available for that. That breastfeeding was easy. That postpartum was easy. That all of that. And of course, through all of that visualizing and whatnot and priming my reticular activating system for that and my energy field for that, I also then took the aligned steps to make that possible for me. We'll talk about that more in the postpartum masterclass. I am going to like fully do a reflection on all of that and give you guys the exact details, even like look up some of my diary entries and whatnot to see what I was doing during that time, because I don't really remember, like when I was pregnant. Okay, and then the last question, which is a very common question, is how did you convince Hal to be okay with the home birth? A lot of people have asked this. I am not sharing this publicly on air. There is a very long answer to this inside of her year. If you are a part of her year this year and you've missed it, it was one of the first questions that I asked, because we were skiing in Beaver Creek when I was asked it, and it was one of the Q&As. So it's like, in the membership IO, like the portal section. It's there for you. If you don't know which one it is, or you haven't been able to find it, you can email Amanda or Olivia and they'll tell you which one it is. And I give you the full, unfiltered, Hal hasn't listened to it. Like I am girl talking you of like exactly how I felt, what I was doing, literally didn't hold back at all, of like how I got the birth that I wanted and how I got Hal on board. And I'm just not going to share it publicly because I don't think he wouldn't want it shared publicly. And also, it was a journey for us. It was hard. It was hard for me. There was a lot of layers to it, and I'm just not going to share it publicly. So it's private. It's in there. If you join her year for the next round next year, you are more than welcome to ask it again, and I will give you guys the full spiel again in a Q&A, or like send you the past one. So it's like exactly how I did it, because it was fresher at that point. But that's the last question that I'm going to answer. So I hope that you guys have loved these 2 episodes about everything about my birth. If you have any other suggestions of podcast things that you would like me, a podcast episode of things you'd like me to talk about, whether it's about the birth, motherhood, postpartum, all of it, please just let us know. Send an email or send a DM and we will put it on the list for podcast ideas. And then if you do want to be informed about that postpartum class of everything I did to have the most blissful newborn bubble and postpartum experience, please make sure that you subscribe, or not subscribe, you add your name to the wait list so that you get an email when that is all out, as obviously we miss things on Instagram sometimes and just from like general emails. And I really hope that you guys just loved this and that you were inspired for your own birth journey or your reclamation of your birth. If you want to have a natural birth or even have, an epidural, but just have a better mindset going into it or whatnot. So thank you guys for listening. Do not forget to leave a review if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next episode.